Hello, everybody. Anthony is here, and this is part three of the series where I'm talking about how I created this particular drone. This is a series where I'm working inside Fusion and assembling the whole part in Fusion. So I'll talk over about the points, try to put all the most interesting stuff, maybe like first 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and I'll just comment on other stuff as I carry on. So this is about running at about 4x speed. So in the previous chapter, I've made a silhouette inside Illustrator. So I already brought it in, and brought it in. If you can see at the top menu bottoms, you have like insert with an image there. So you can insert either a .svg file or .dxf. And DXF is way better than SVG. SVG, if you input it, and you're probably familiar with SVG because SVG is more of a standard file used in graphic design. And .dwg or .dxf is more of a standard file used in CAD. So .dxf is a bit of a newer format, and you only have these two options, SVG and .dxf. And one thing I didn't know at the time I was doing this, but essentially you can export all the layers as outside Illustrator. So you can just import one sketch, use all your stuff in, and then position it in place. What I was doing is I was inputting stuff from Illustrator one by one, and when it inputs it inputs it off center or like off position. I really don't know why it does it, because even though I tried to correctly position everything to the center inside Illustrator, it still came out off. So I don't know how to really make it always in the center. And I've tried to Google about stuff about it. I only found like educational video where they talked about that. Well, if you want to input it, you use a move tool to move the stuff in place, which is kind of not the way how you solve the issue. But I had to use the move tool to move everything in place. And because I was inputting part by part, I had to move everything individually. So right now, if so, I've already done like the front antenna, just because I was setting out in Fusion after a long break, and I didn't want to embarrass myself too much on a recording doing it. But really, this is what I really liked about my approach, like about just kind of brute force approach, where you drop a sketch from Illustrator, maybe know nothing about Fusion, or just you just really you need to know two commands to start with. You need to know how to E is like a shortcut. E is to extrude, and F to make fillets on your mesh, and there you go. You start doing that, then you start then you start thinking, oh right, well, I maybe need to fix the sketch because the stuff we got from Illustrator, it didn't work out right. Then you start to go inside the sketch palette and modify that stuff. So so it's really like I really like that approach to just throw it in, and without too much preparation, and you learn as you go. And here I was learning as I went. So you can see I'm fixing up my sketch, because essentially I had these kind of cut lines that went through the wing, and turned out that you want to have one solid silhouette, one solid vector silhouette without any holes, and you want those cuts to be a separate silhouettes that you will extrude to do the holes. And that is because if you do a fillet on one part of the wing, it's not going to fillet the whole wing. It's only going to fillet the one part of the wing. So yeah, that's kind of, so you can see now I got a fairly clean piece. And there, it was kind of a thing I didn't know about. So I'm telling you now, that took me a while to figure out, well, not figure out, but took me a while to fix. And at the time, again, I wasn't fixing it the best in the best, I would say, optimal way. I should have just gone back to Illustrator, fix the whole outline, and drop it in, which I've done. This is something that I've done later for my stuff. Also, now you'll see me trying to do a fillet on the wing. Sometimes it wouldn't go right, and that's again because I have way too many dots on the line, uh, inputting that from Illustrator. So I had to simplify the silhouette of the wing quite a bit. And that would be quite a bit of a persistent problem. Having way too many dots on the outline that prevents you from doing a nice fillet. And I'm not sure what I'm doing now. I might be just experimenting with this stuff. But talking back about the formats to input stuff, essentially SVG, if you input it, what are the issues I had? Like circles stopped being circles. Like they just became like blobs. It's really funny. When DXIF, I input that, not only you can input all the layers, there will be each layer will become a sketch, but it inputs properly. Right here, you could have just seen I've done this bevel, which is really an amazing feature of Fusion, where you can do this really pretty cool bevels across the whole surface, having holes inside them, and stuff like that. They don't always behave. Okay, you see, I'm removing these bits there. They don't always behave as you want, these bevels or fillets, but they give you a pretty cool result pretty often. Right, so I'm just playing around with fillets, a different amount of them. So I want to make a one big fillet up front, and you can see I'm failing right here. So, but sometimes you scroll up and down. Sometimes you find a value that really helps, and you're like 700 millimeters doesn't help, but 300 millimeters helps. But 200 millimeters is broken, so it's a little bit random in certain cases. And these two lines have really prohibited me from doing much, so I had to remove them and simplify the whole wing silhouette quite a bit. So you can see now I'm getting that random numeric number that allows me to push through. So like 50 millimeters not doing it, just gives me an error, but 200 millimeters does it. So it doesn't really make sense. But okay, I'll do it. I'll, and you can see I got some random stuff. Okay, now I just fill that, destroy that. This was really probably the most troublesome piece, this particular win. Spend the most time playing around with it. And then you can also combine it with the shapes, right? So I'll just combine it. Probably not combine it now, but combine later, because you don't want to do something that destructive. And by the way, I have a history at the bottom. History, it slows down the whole thing a little bit. So you can consider moments when you would not have any history on. And I mean, it still was handy sometimes in certain objects when could go jump back uh, in history and fix the fillet amount here and there. But overall, I think you're better off without history in many cases. Problem is also that once you've done a certain amount of modifications and you decide, okay, well, I really want to turn off the history, which I've done later on. I wanted to turn off the history. I turned off the history, but it created me a whole bunch of nodes in the palette that were annoying, and some like random fillet stuff, which I didn't know what to do with. But yeah. So it's better to turn it off early. And here I'm back inside Illustrator. Probably just preparing stuff for export. Also here you can see this was kind of my joint mechanics for the win, and that honestly wasn't good. It wasn't really thought through, and took me some time to figure it out later on. Well, it was kind of the idea that I will do the joints partially inside Illustrator and figure that out in Fusion, which I did. But today I would rather do a bit of extra work inside Illustrator or Photoshop, like to sort that out, sort the mechanics out, really understand it, and then bring it to Fusion, because doing stuff in Fusion takes time, takes way more time than inside Illustrator. Like it pretty much takes 10 more time. Like in Illustrator you can do it in a minute or a couple of minutes. In Fusion it will take you 10 times longer, just 10x. take you 20 minutes to fix that stuff, experiment with that stuff, and figure out how it looks better. So I should have just really figure out joining mechanics well. You can also see when I was exporting, I changed the millimeters to centimeters in that export window. It was really briefly shown. It's quite a big deal. If you have it at millimeter scale, then it becomes tiny. If you drop it at a centimeter scale, it gets. Actually, I might have even made a mistake here. I should have exported at yeah, at 1 centimeter. So exported before at 0.1 centimeter. I should have exported at 1 centimeter. That keeps the scale proper, not too tiny, not too big. I do get this gray splane. I'm not sure what that is. It could be the grid, a really dense grid, but I was trying to fight it. I wasn't able to get rid of that gray plane. It was really annoying. Kind of at the end of the day, I decided, okay, let it go and say, okay, can't really deal anything with that, so I probably just can stop noticing that. So again, I'm moving that piece in place, and if I had a .dxf format with all the layers in place, all layers can become. You can see on my right there's a DXF layers, only one layer. Could have had like 5 layers there, and I'll upload maybe in a week or two. I'll upload another little video about um, a thing I did inside Fusion and Illustrator and Blender. And there I did that. I exported the XF with a bunch of layers. It was like a breathe, having 5 layers in, 5 inside Fusion was much easier to deal with. All right, so now I'm picking shapes to extrude. So I'm still not sure how to deal with symmetrical objects inside Fusion. I haven't found a way to do it easy. And that's quite a big thing. Still do mirroring, and that's kind of like my dead mirroring, where it's like, okay, I have a mirror that's no longer, it can be affected by another object. So I don't know yet how to mirror properly. I've googled it up, haven't found good answers. There should be something there that allows you to mirror properly, but not yet. And I have these gaps between the parts, that so essentially all these parts are hanging in the air, but that wasn't obviously intentional. I knew that it would give me a little hole there that should look fairly realistic on the render, and nobody would ever know that it's actually something hanging up in the air, unless they look straight from the top and see the gaps, which I didn't want anybody to let. Wasn't going anybody to let and do. This part I would say is quite, I would say, kind of fun, where you just sit and you methodically do stuff. And by the way, I can see my body count on my left is kind of getting a bit too high for a single component. So essentially, in Fusion, you deal with these components. A component is like your group. It contains sketches and bodies and everything. It's quite handy. I mean, essentially, you can hide them, just select them, export them as separate components to other files. And I'll usually try to keep components maybe at 30 body count max, 26 body count, 25, just so it doesn't get too messy. I've seen like because I've seen people online asking like, "Oh, I've got a component with 400 bodies, and it's a little bit slow." I mean, like, no way it's slow. Of course, it's going to be slow. Like, they want to break it down to 10 components, or each with 40 bodies, and isolate that particular component. The big thing about Fusion in the like it happened last year, they finally introduced hotkeys that you can assign to different tools. Again, they did it like a Fusion way that do not allow you to assign hotkeys to all of the tools. Like, for example, I cannot assign a hotkey to isolate. You have to go in the menu and click isolate every time you do it. Extremely annoying, but at least you can now assign hotkeys to different stuff, which is much better. Okay, here I'm just in a render setup. I just wanted to see how it looks in a render view. Just some basic shading. All right. So extruding, keeping on extruding parts here and there. We'll notice me not doing one thing, and that thing is fairly big. It's I didn't fillet the hard edges on all of these guys. I didn't fillet it because if, for example, you usually in Keyshot, so I was rendering in Keyshot. In Keyshot, you have a rounded edges uh, kind of shader modifier. It's a huge thing because if you start to fillet every single edge or hard edge here, first of all, it takes a lot of time to because selection in Fusion sucks. It's really tricky to get selection out. It's not as easy as in traditional polygonal software. Then if you do everything, if you fillet everything, mesh gonna be get super heavy. Like you're just gonna get twice, like not even twice, like 3 or 4 times heavier. And if you, especially if you start like dropping it inside of your like 3D modeling package and turn it into a real triangulated mesh, like this guy was 10 million triangles. Well, it wasn't 10 million triangles. I'm not sure how many triangles it was, but I know there's at least in 10 or 15 million range of triangles because I dropped inside Maya and I transformed one of the little parts to polygons, and that little leg part turned to be like 1.5 million triangles. So really, you don't want to do fillets unless it's going to be baked down to a low poly. In that case, you're kind of screwed because I don't know any rounded edges modifier that can be. Well, I mean, I can think about it as if, for example, in 3ds Max, you apply some kind of remesh, a modifier or blender. You apply a remesh modifier on this, and then you apply turbo smooth. Well, in 3ds Max, it'll smooth the edges. It's gonna be freaking heavy stuff. It's like it's probably not really doable, to be honest. Yeah, it's if it really needs to be baked as it is from the step file from Fusion, then you kind of have to do fillers on everything. Otherwise, it's gonna be obviously way too sharp. Well, there you go. You have to do it. But if you're rendering just as focus concept purposes inside Keyshot or inside V-Ray in 3ds Max, you do have the opportunity to use the rounded edges modifier. I think one of Octane's got it. Something of Google. Maybe doesn't. Maybe does. Definitely, and it looks in Keyshot it's pretty cool because you essentially can change the amount of rounded edges, right? So here, if you fill it here, then it's it for good. But in Keyshot, you can change the amount. I mean, there it's kind of obviously a fakeish rounded edge. So if you go a bit too extreme, it starts to look fake. But for small amounts of round edge rounded, it looks pretty good. So this is my first test on mirroring the whole bit after I did the simple extrusion of the whole part. It's like far from being finished, like really far. But at least it starts to give you an idea how it's going to look. And here I'm just picking the edges to fill it. One thing I really hate about Fusion that if you do this tough selection and you by accident drop it, because it's really easy to drop selection, then you cannot undo selection. It's like, okay, that's it, it's gone for good. So every time it says me, oh, you cannot do bevel there, it drops the selection and I have to reselect again and try it again. It's so stupid. The best software I've seen that's been realized is a little modeling software called Sila, where you had separate undos for actions and separate undos for selections. So if you selected a few objects and then it thought, oh, I need to actually introduce another edge loop there, you would drop the selection, do an edge loop, then undo the selection, and that selection that you've done before will be activated. So that was, and then you had like Alt Z for to undo the selections. It was so good. That software, unfortunately, though its Silo was a extremely fast polygonal modeler back like 10 years ago, they stopped developing it even like in 2010 already, and they recently got resurrected. They started to develop it, but now there's just not much point to study Silo considering that other softwares programs they caught up, and even and it would definitely make more sense to like study Blender than Sailor. So unfortunately, guys, Sailor guys, you missed out on the whole generation of development. But it was kind of funny because this a little Sailor is a little software that nobody people know about, but it was extremely fast back in the day because they could have actually assigned hotkeys to everything. I assigned like I had hotkeys like 20 hotkeys assigned to my mouse, like different combinations of Control Shift left click and Control Shift right click, Control click, all Alt click, Alt left click, all that stuff being there, and was really quick workflow. Yeah, but now we can do the same assignments inside Blender if you want to, and it will be even better. Yeah, I got a bit sidetracked to separate stuff. So picking this. Doing the bevel. So there was a bit limited. I wanted to do a stronger bevel, but then I started to cut in the mesh. Here I wasn't able to do a bevel that would be strong enough. But anyway, it looks okay. Picking different parts for beveling or filling. Yeah, you can see here I have to pick everything one by one. Not sure if there's a better way of doing it. Might be. Don't think so, actually. I think originally they wanted to do Fusion for people who would like lazily do cut design on their on their tablets, but the moment you kind of want some speed, and the moment you ask for speed, you really need all the hotkeys, all kinds of stuff optimized for your use. Also, actually, a big thing I have here, and I wonder if anybody is listening at the moment, if you made that far. But I'm using a mouse that's got a Logitech mouse with a whole bunch of buttons. No, don't know the name of the mouse. Uh, don't remember now. But essentially, I have enter key mapped to a third button. I have a third button on my. It's going to be like right button. So because all these pop-ups, every time they pop up, they have to press enter for them to disappear. So if you're using like keyboard and a mouse, so if you're using keyboard and a pen, that stuff becomes really troublesome because you have to press like 1,000 operations every time pressing enter. That's a lot of enter pressing, and enter is pretty far away from your hands. So essentially, I have enter mapped to my right button on the mouse, so it's really fast. And I have enter mapped because so essentially I'm using a laptop, an Alienware laptop. I have a whole video about it. And Alienware laptop, they have extra hotkey, extra keys on my left. From you see there's left control. I have extra few buttons there, extra 6 buttons. I actually only use one of them. I should map more stuff to that. And that one is enter. So I mapped enter to my left, like part of the keyboard. I also mapped delete button to my mouse, and I should map delete button to left of my keyboard as well, because this is like enter and delete, one of the most frequently used buttons ever. So it's you really don't want to have anything in the middle that you use often. So you don't want your hand to carry over across to the middle of the keyboard. You want to have keyboard hotkeys somewhere by your left hand and by your right mouse. Well, depending if you're left-handed or right-handed. So like typing values in, like every time you have to type in it was, I think it was a bit time consuming. Thing is, the funny thing is in Fusion you can actually introduce a variable. So say like x is your 10 millimeter radius. So every time you do a filler and you press x, it becomes not press x, but you type in x value, like just an x. X becomes your 10 millimeter radius. And if you press like x duplicate x multiply 2, that will be 20 millimeter radius. So that's in that particular case, it's quite handy. Haven't used that functionality, but it's definitely handy. It can be really handy in certain cases because typing those values in was a bit time consuming. For example, if you always deal with a certain scale and you have your frequent favorite values like 10, 25, 50, um, just mapping them to variables like x zxc is great because you have those buttons right at your left hand and you can type it in pretty well. And it's actually, I've never thought about it that way. It really helps doing videos about it, talking it through, uh, and figuring out this system of improving the workflow, making it faster. So here you can see I had the same issue with this big win as I had with the lower win. Lower win that I have a whole bunch of parts that have been cut through, and I actually need one single shape. Like I have to combine everything again, which is troublesome. And every time I do that, it recalculates the extrusion and all that stuff. It's pretty slow. You can see it in a speed up version of that, but in real life, it's going to be like really slow. Also, like every time you save in Fusion, it gives you this pop up. Do you want to save it as a user defined version? And this is where enter helps again. Like you press Control S, enter, Control S, enter. I mean, it's annoying that you even have to do even that you even have to press enter. But if you have to press S on the keyboard, it just gets even more annoying. All right, just deleting everything to have one big bin to extrude from. I might have been able to extrude by picking all the sketches, all those minor lines, and extruding everything up. That would have been a solution, I think, here, but not sure 100%. I was using pen and mouse in a lot here. I think pen is quite handy navigation wise. It's really fast. His mouse gives you a little bit more precision to move stuff around, but pen is definitely a good one. Here you can see I'm trying to do a bevel, but I wasn't able to do it because I have these little dots around that prevent me from doing that bevel. So again, I'm trying to do the bevel, it doesn't allow me to do the bevel. So okay, it allowed me to do bevel from there, but then it cuts through in the funny places. So it was a bit tough one to figure out. Here I got the nice bevel. I was pretty happy about it. And here it just behaves randomly. Oh, this winds really gave me a trouble. So push it a little bit like that. I think I kept that shape. Oh god, how much time did I spend on this? That was a so here I thought like, oh, I can do at least I can do a bevel from the bottom. So like, okay, I'll do a bevel from the top there, but then I'll do a bevel from the bottom on a different part, I think. So here I'm creating some kind of box that I couldn't use to subtract the values because I was seeing that I cannot do a bevel, so I have to somehow make it this win thinner. So my idea of it was just essentially about cutting through using a boolean operation and thinning it out, doing it like that. And I find like moving operations inside Fusion a little bit cumbersome. Like a pen really helps here, vacuum pen. Also thinking about it, it's okay if I don't have a nice bean underneath because it really was meant to be just a top render, like a render showing the front bits, nothing from the back. So I just wanted only to make a good impression from the front. All right, so I've cut it through. I was fairly happy about it, and that cut I was able to bevel. That was essentially my solution. That annoying problem that I couldn't bevel from the top, I had to cut through from the bottom. The problem that another problem that because it inputs your sketches off the center, it eliminates your kind of freedom of jumping back into Illustrator, doing something stuff, bringing the sketch over inside Fusion. Because and every time you do that, you have to move your sketch in place, and moving your sketch in place is really tricky because you have to really get it in the right place, and that's a fairly big issue. So here I decided to start doing the models for the wings. This bits so essentially because this whole drone is fairly small, so I'm thinking about electric motors to make to make them to rotate all these bits. Uh, and all the joints are activated by electric motors. I don't have really any exposed wiring, so you can imagine it's like small wires running inside the bodies. Still relatively possible. I didn't want to mess around with wiring too much because, yeah, just you have to think if you do wiring, you have to think about wiring housing as well, like where does it get attached, and it's just kind of beyond doing that for this particular bit. And one thing is like why I need to have different components and bodies. A fairly big thing is that when you do a cut operations, it starts to cut through everything, like cuts everything, and you want to have it. You want to have the ability to isolate your bodies and components to hide everything, so that if you cut only the stuff that you need to cut through. So you can see here I'm cutting through everything. So you can pick the bodies you don't want to cut through, but the picking is a lengthy process. So it's better if you just hide everything else that you're not dealing with to avoid those annoying cut through stuff. So you see I'm hiding here doing the backwards extrusion. This is essentially I'm extruding backwards and cutting the body. And I'm doing the cylinders. Rotational joints are pretty boring usually, just cylinders upon cylinders and circles. Really, really can hardly do anything else. I do talk about cylinders in depth in my 3D code design in massive Mac tutorial, but that one is not free, but this one is. Right, so I'm just copying this electric motor over to another leg. And again, you can see it's a bit of an intrusive introduction of electric motors because I haven't really thought through the joints. And the thing that I didn't thought through is because, well, you don't know how big they should be, how they would look like. So that's why I decided like I have to do them inside Fusion. I have to place them inside Fusion, and that's gonna help out. Because when you're inside of it, then you really can place it intuitively. Though it takes definitely way more time than if you'd done it in a Illustrator environment. So I'm looking at this win, and I understand that win is not really placed correctly. It doesn't have that freedom of motion for this electrical motor work right. So I will move the win later on a little bit to the left. And I can resize the motor because this part is kind of smaller, so you probably would need a less powerful motor. You can see here the win's been modified. I kind of deleted the win that I was doing in the beginning of this video, and I just made this really flat plane that I would modify later on. There is another rotational joint there. Copied and carried over. And another bit here. I felt like it really needed something a bit more complex in front. I did end up having density of detail. It was a little bit uneven. Like I had a really densely like detailed parts in front, but back is not really that densely detailed. You can see it in the renders. It's not that huge, so I decided just whatever. I want. I only kind of realized it on the renders, so I decided that I kind of be bothered about bringing it back to Keyshot to re-render and everything because I need to add a few extra bullshit detailing to the back of the drone. But that was a bit of a pain in the eye for me. Yeah, one thing I really like about it is just about Fusion is when you have these holes with fillets that's been beveled. It's just so tricky to do it right inside traditional polygonal software. Just have to waste so much time. All right, so now I have a fun part. It's quite a bit of fun combining the cylinders with the bits because they will just bevel in seamlessly like that. This is some really cool shapes that we get. You can get. And essentially, because now I know a bit more about placing these electric motors, if I'm going to be doing something similar, I will know now how to place them inside Illustrator for them to look right. Just carry on with combining stuff. And because it took me a couple of days, few days actually to do this stuff. I wasn't doing it every day for like 10 hours. Not really. I was doing every day, a few days, a few hours a day. I was also watching a lot of stuff on YouTube on pretty much everything I could get my hands on. Not everything, but a lot of stuff on YouTube about Fusion. And there's a little bit stuff done by Kirill Chepishka. There's not that much stuff available on YouTube, surprisingly, about concept designing inside Fusion. Uh, Chepishka is probably the most famous guy on Fusion uh, right now. And essentially by watching them I was improving along the way, but again it's like the thing is I was talking about, you jump in, start doing stuff, and then uh, as demand is rising to understand why is it doing that way, why is it not doing that this thing, you start to improve on yourself, you start to Google stuff, and uh, I will be assigning hotkeys along as I go, as long as the moment I see that there's an operation that I'm just reusing again and again, I will start doing the hotkeys. So here I was like cutting through to get some extra space for this element that's going to be rotating. So I wanted to give extra breathing space for the rotational element. Not many people really see that, but it's good to think those things through. For the whole thing to look a little bit more believable in general. I did feel in the end that I didn't make enough larger joints, so I had this like flappers that we were able to move, but I wish I have made something like made the whole bit moving up and down, like the whole left side moving up and down. That have been really cool, and not that really hard to make. maybe even like even having a rotator joint right in the middle of the drone body, so we can go up and down. Yeah, having a lot of surfaces that can move is really cool, and something you can try out yourself. Starting out as a flat design, but knowing that if you add little joints here and there, you can make it really 3D dimensional and not flat. I really wish I had a 3D printer. I would have just printed this guy out. They're getting cheaper, the printers. Like you can buy one maybe for 150 American dollars, maybe even cheaper, but it's still a bit of a hustle and not a straightforward thing to deal with. Uh, kind of research the subject and I just kind of abandoned the idea eventually. But I will buy one eventually anyway, maybe in a year or a couple of years. Just it's just gonna be so cool just to try it out to print something like this. I don't know, hang it on a wall. One thing that's really tricky with Fusion is like I have this really long antennas, right? And I cannot bend these antennas. So I know that in Moy 3D there is a possibility that you have like kind of like a warp modifier that you can apply to the mesh so you can bend the antennas. And if you look closely at my renders, all of those antennas are actually straight. Uh, I mean, I was able to fake that bending of antenna by rotating them up and by giving them a curvature from the silhouette, but I wasn't able to essentially pick end of the antenna and move it a little bit up or move it a little bit down. It's just something that you cannot do inside Vision. You just cannot. It, so all antennas stayed straight, but luckily they looked okay. So beveling that bit. And I'm a little bit halfway. So this is where I spend a lot of time trying to figure out the joints for the wing rotators. And man, it looks so easy when you spit it up 4 times. Like because everything here is a little bit awkward, especially because it's all under an angle, right? So everything's been rotated, uh, not rotated, but the wind been drawn under an angle, and I have to place everything under an angle and deal with everything on that angle. While when I move stuff around, it's not. I mean, I think it can rotate the pivot point, but it just takes time to rotate the stuff. So I was looking for the ways not to rotate it. There's a lot of finer things in Fusion, like if I want to delete a part that I've created, just going and pressing delete on it can cause a chain reaction of just really weird. Like it doesn't allow you to delete many parts because I've created that's especially when I have history on. That's why I recommend to turn it off quite often. Because it remembers created this part long time ago, though it didn't affect any other part. If you delete it, it starts to break down or something. It either takes you forever to delete it, or it goes highwire that goes crazy. I had to kind of pretty much kill Fusion a few times when I was trying to delete parts because it was just freezing out. So essentially, your way to delete parts, if you, you want to, you need to boolean them out essentially. So you use the boolean operation and it cut through themselves. This way you delete them out. It's a bit stupid and leaves a trace in history, so you make a history heavier. But that turned out to be a quicker and faster way than actually pressing the delete button. You apply this thread cut through the body and you cut them out. I even had to create, in certain cases, I even created boxes which I used to cut and delete stuff out because I had to apply this fusion boolean operation to delete them. And you do fall a victim of some of this kind of stuff, which sometimes you pick a wrong piece and start to modify it, or like beveling. Sometimes you bevel the wrong piece, it doesn't want to bevel properly, and it's can freeze out for good. Like it can freeze out, and you have to delete it. Auto saving system inside Fusion is fairly good. Every version that the save is saved on the cloud. Every version that the save is saved on the cloud. So it's fairly safe. I'm not sure how it behaves itself in an offline environment. I'm quite curious about it. But originally I was a bit of an opponent of it. Like, oh, how come like all my stuff kind of doesn't belong to me? It goes to the cloud. But I think you do have an option to save it locally. But over the time, especially after I had a crash on one of my hard drives, which hasn't been backed up. I have many hard drives, so it wasn't too big of a deal, but it was a fairly big of a deal. I started to appreciate that. Yeah, actually, it's actually a good idea to have stuff backed up. Right now, I have backup service run on Backblaze. If you pay like $6, $6 American a month for backing up my stuff, it's unlimited backup. So definitely a good deal. I would recommend to use that. And I also kind of back up my stuff in a way that I offer this stuff for free or for $1 if I do not limit Gumroad standard. So I put it on Gumroad and offer it to other people. And for me, it's also again like backing up my work. It's pretty easy. Oh, I have just because I've just seen how I added this detail on top of it. Just kind of, it's pretty cool. I'll probably do it here as well. So you pick the surface, you do the offset for the whole bit, then I draw the kind of like ribs. I don't know how it's called, like support structures. Pick those guys in, then I go and do fillet on the corners. Again, picking the corners is tough. Like picking this is no like range selection like in any other modeling software. You have to do it all by hand. I googled that. Apparently, you cannot. You have to do it by hand all the time. And this is where I should have added a bit more depth to the cut and should have added more detail. So this is the part where I kind of under detailed. I think I do have a fairly nice balance of detailing, and in terms of like I have surfaces where I don't have any details. This is to be wings, front wing, back wing, and the body of this drone doesn't have a lot of detailing. And then I have all the metallic parts that are super highly over detailed, which is gives a fairly good balance. I still think I can low amount of detailing. I have a big tendency to over detail, just And that's, I think it's a lot of modular sound artists, concept artists do that. Uh, they over detail their stuff while they should really rely more on the strength of their shapes, strength of the empty space. Like, for example, I think one of the really huge cases of over detailing when it looks at stuff done for Wolfenstein, for example, if you Google that up on ArtStation, uh, that stuff is definitely just over detailed, in my opinion. Just, just overkilled on many levels. Well, it looks really cool though, so we cannot deny that. Wolfenstein robots and props. I just repeated that, so operation. It's just, this one is really fun and easy in general. Just drawing that up down. Snaps really easy, and then you just need to push it down and bevel, fill the edges. When I have the joints in, you do have an ability to test rotations. You cannot export any rotation animations to anywhere else. I don't even think you can export it to Keyshot or something like that. Though I need to double check that particular statement if I can to export animation. But I think you can still kind of pause it in here and then export it to Keyshot. And it's quite a quite an easy way to test this stuff. I wasn't able to do it when I was doing this drone, but then I just watched a good tutorial on it on YouTube, and then I was able to test it out. Uh, well, yeah, it's definitely good to be able to rotate stuff and see how it looks. And again, here I'm only doing the top. Everything that's behind, I'm just plainly ignoring. Again, symmetry, I was talking about, not sure how it works here inside Fusion. So if I had to do this bit symmetrical, I would just had to copy and mirror it across without having any actual instance in symmetry that, you know, that would inherit any transforms. So that's still a problem for me. While looking at this, trying to evaluate, and find I need to do another hole. Again, doing a sketch is really easy. You just pick the surface you want to do it, offset it, and do that ring hole. I really like that when I export it as a step file, the size of the file is pretty tiny. It's like 20 megabytes. So that's why I was able to upload it for free on Gumroad because it's under the size limit there, under 25 megabytes. Uh, but like I was saying, if you input it to Maya, for example, you input it to Maya and you get a whole bunch of knobs. The normals there are funny. The normals are flipped occasionally. The whole object is broken apart to knob surfaces, so nothing is solid. Like you have essentially all these parts are individual. Like you, you have a box. Essentially, it's broken up to six sides. It's that, and not only just six sides, but normals are going to be flipped here and there. But it is an up surface, so it's fairly light, just 20 megabytes. But again, like I was saying, if you convert those knob surfaces to polygons, they become millions and millions in size. And here you can see I'm making a pattern on the body. I'm still not really super adept at creating patterns. So here I decided that if I just copy paste a whole bunch of circles and then copy them again and copy them and paste, it would be probably and it probably is still the best way of doing it on this particular surface. But for example, if you want to do something like a golf ball and you have a sphere and I want a feature like this little things they call the feature, like adding a feature. You want to have this feature scattered across the whole ball around it. It's a different approach. I actually don't know yet how to do it, but I know that it's possible. So if I need to do it in the future, I'll just Google it up. Here, just copying and pasting circles look like the path of the least resistance. And if I can do something in a kind of brute force manner, I'll do it. Again, like you kind of have to select every single one to do the fill operation, which is a bit annoying. And you can kind of copy it, even that feature you can copy and paste it, so it will be pasted on the surface, which is kind of cool. I'm not sure why I didn't do it here. Maybe I was just trying to do it and kind of was failing, but it happens. And then I started doing this on this side. Copying, moving across, just eyeballing really for most of the part. Right, going to the joints of the vein. And the final thing is that, well, originally I was planning to do the propellers inside, but doing the propellers inside means that then for them to be rounded properly, I need to rotate them. Well, first of all, I have to do the propellers, and that's like an extra hassle. and I was getting a bit tired at this point anyway with the whole project. So I was like, ah, do I really need to do propellers? But then I thought, like, if I do propellers, I also need to do a proper animation of it, in terms of not proper animation, but I'll need to do a motion blue on propellers. To get the motion blue on propellers, I actually don't know how it's done in Keyshot, but usually you have to, you, well, usually you have to animate it, and there's no way around it. So you have to just apply some rotation values. It's not too hard, but it is a hassle. Like doing speed, like rotating the propellers, then checking out that the motion blue looks right, and testing it out over and over again. Again, was when I thought about it, just like it's kind of a bit too much. So just imagine that there are these magic circles that propel the vehicle, creating a vertex. And I even started to check it. Oh, you could have just seen that I've bullied out an object out of existence. Existence is a bit funny. I even found a video on drones on YouTube where they call them drones without propellers, but there are, like, they do have propellers, but they're inside the body, and they like have outward tubing that kind of is controlled and allows the drone to live. So essentially, you make the drone safer because you don't have any these awful propellers running around, which can cut you pretty badly. Uh, and yeah, so I decided that, okay, there's probably gonna be some kind of technology like that in the future, maybe, hopefully, and I'll just make it a little bit sci-fi-ish, like having it tiny inside the wing, like some force field. And I wasn't really planning to put it inside the water. So if you look at my renders, they all look like underwater renders. And the idea wasn't really to put it in the water, but when I rendered it on a black environment, I definitely said it looked like it's like underwater shooting. And I thought, okay, I'll just try to make it underwater, because I had a nice particle pack as well, which I applied on top. Personally, I had a drone myself, DJI Phantom 3, which I used a bit for fun, but then I crashed it, and I actually disassembled the drone because I had to change the motors, and these little motors, they really remind me about the motors I had in my drone, those little cylindrical ones. So I had to, essentially, you cannot just unplug a motor out of drone. You have to solder it out, like you unsolder it, melt the solder and such, which is a bit time consuming. And I actually never done soldering, but because I really wanted to fix the drone, and the drones, even though I bought a used drone, they're still expensive. So I fixed that. Essentially, had solder, resolder, and I soldered one motor in, but then I made a mistake with because they have to solder in a particular order. If you don't solder in a particular order, then they start to rotate in opposite directions. And I mean, they are rotating in opposite directions. So if you put them in wrong places, it stops flying. Right, just meets the ground immediately. So I had to resolder them back. And that case, the DJI Phantom 3 case, just was crazy hard to open. It's just crazy. Well, anyway, I managed to deal with it. However, though I've put the right models in, then I decided that, oh well, I have this DJI drone which I can upgrade. I had like a 2K camera, and I had because I was buying some spare parts, so used spare parts here and there from other crash drones. I had a 4K camera, and I decided, okay, I'll just put a 4K camera on my drone because it's essentially the same. So I disassembled it, put a camera in, changed the hardware, updated the hardware, and it just stopped working. It was no longer working. It was just dead drone forever. No matter what I did, I couldn't launch it in the air at all. That hardware, it was really a bummer. So I had to sell it for parts. Essentially, I sold the motherboard separately, or the motherboard of the drone, sell the case of the drone, the motors, propellers, everything was sold to parts. That's a one sad story. But I'm looking into getting a new Mavic drone. They're way smaller than DJI Phantom 3s. They're huge. And this Mavic looks great. My friends got it one. And I just really like the type of shooting you can get from them. And yeah, I'm not sure if the knowledge of the drone, how they work and how they are assembled and disassembled helped me here. Still here just dealing with the shapes and not much of else. But I think it all helps a little bit here and there. I watch a lot of shows on engineering, like really curious about it, how the stuff is made. And when I design near future stuff, I think near future stuff like it's the toughest one to design because it really implies that you know a lot. Like if you're doing a gun that's near future gun, that quite often means that you need to know how mechanics of the gun is working, how it's what's inside the gun essentially, how it coils back, all the bits to trigger group, the gas stuff, how to get the gas out. Also, so much of that. I even made a separate video on how where I study guns and essentially using a tool called assembly. I think it's Walls gun assembly on Steam. There's a game like that. It's pretty amazing because you can look into any kind of guns and check out what's inside. So essentially, all that little bit of engineering understanding goes into your design and helps you to make it fairly helps it to make it a bit more understandable. Another a bit more realistic, looking a bit more realistic. And it's kind of what I like about this kind of job is you feed your own curiosity about the world. Uh, Here you can see I'm about to cut through the top of this little wing, so I had to create a sketch, which you can draw inside Illustrator as well. Some this type of sketch bring in here, and then use the cut tool to cut through. But obviously, I didn't know that at the time. And what I was doing, oh yeah, so essentially, I really like this kind of occupation because you really learn a lot about the world around you. And like you want to do, I don't know, a vehicle, you set to study vehicles, essentially suspension. It's you really need to understand suspension, how it works, and what kind of mechanics goes in. You go into drones, so you want to study a little mechanics like wings and electrical motors, all that stuff, and how you put the stuff together. So yeah, it really fits your curiosity. It's really interesting in that case. It kind of makes you watch some kind of documentary engineering stuff. It becomes a bit of a helps with the job. Okay, so I'm doing these bits to be holes. I thought there would be holes in the motor, not the holes, but just some kind of these dots for sci-fi props. They people usually really like to put them on. There's like three dots or five dots, and I decided to put them on this particular little motor. I only put them there because I got just lazy about copying them over to other motors, and they didn't look that amazing to me to carry on and copy them to each other motor. So I'll cut it through right now. Cut, cut, cut. Now I need to put them a bit deeper. Yeah, I've got the dots. Just trying to find a bevel. Like you go a little bit too high, it gives you a mistake. You go too low, gives you a mistake. So you have to go make it right. So here, look at how it's rendered, and I decided like, okay, now I don't. I'm too lazy to carry on and do these dots on all of the models. And stuff I had here, I was listening to hardcore history. So I obviously, when I do this stuff, you listen to a lot of things. I was listening to hardcore history. If you don't know about it, it's a really cool historical podcast. I've listened to most of it, to most of the series. Right now, he's doing well. Dan Carlin, the podcast that he's doing, a series about Japan and how they became essentially superpower in before the World War II. Pretty brutal stuff. It was interesting, but it's funny when you look at the stuff you've been modeling, and while you're watching something or while you're listening to something, that stuff comes to mind. And here I use this big tube essentially to give a housing for my um, joints for the electric motors. So made it and cut out that whole bit out of the shape. Again, that's to do that stuff is a little bit awkward inside Fusion. But here I might not have any other choice. All right, so I'm trying to destroy this element by pulling it out. Not the whole element, but bits of it. So I need parts that are attached to the frame, and I need parts that are attached to the wing. So this is I'm drawing a part that is going to be my attachment to the wing. I was thinking if I could just leave the wing floating in the air, but I decided that if it's gonna be somebody's noticing, going to notice that it's not really attached to anything, it's gonna be really bizarre. So I decided to go and make the attachments. Yeah, now I'm thinking about it. I was listening to a book by an American astronaut. Uh, Maybe it's called Kelly or something. He's quite a funny guy. Wrote a book called Endurance about the space and his journey to the space, how he became an astronaut. Really interesting. A lot of a good collection of funny stories as well. So I'll recommend to listen to that if you get a chance. Usually I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. He got a really interesting guest there quite often. And yeah, I guess it's gonna take me a while to design this particular beat. And I'm drawing a shape that is going to hold those parts. Yoo-hoo, done. And it turned out to be not big enough, I think. This is a bit of an issue when I start to extrude from the body. It automatically starts to connect with everything else, so like combines. And I did a problem here where one of the joints got like soldered with the with the vein in a wrong fashion by accident because I extruded a bit. So you have to kind of either hide everything, which here assembly was getting a bit complicated and was a bit chaotic. uh so I wasn't able to hide everything, or you have to create a new body every time you extrude or cut stuff out. Well, not when I cut, but when I extrude stuff out, you have to create a new body command, which again is not really useful in all the cases. So I'm creating this body sketch to destroy this bit at the bottom, you can see. And I wasn't able to destroy everything, so now I'm just boolean it out of existence again because I just cannot press delete. It's impossible. It becomes a big hassle. And somewhere there I moved the plane a little bit, the whole thing, and that changed the positioning of little parts like that, like particular that one in particular. All right, boolean it out. Look, destroyed, destroyed, destroyed. So combine it to be a one piece. And here I think I found out that this bit got soldered, got merged together with the vein, which was really annoying. So I had to essentially destroy that little bit that was connected to the vein. I should have done before. And lift the vein itself, so it's no longer intersecting with the mortars. So I had to redo that part. And yeah, the 4x speed looks nice and easy. At real time, it's boring and slow. Even the camera rotation is a little bit funny the way it's done. Again, it's much. I had to jump from mouse to pen and with pen it was easier. So yeah, I was thinking that that bit hanging around is a bit funny, so I put it in. One thing though, like the division doesn't like when you move stuff that's been sketched. I can't even explain it properly, but if you sketch something and then move it around, then it becomes horrible. So you can see now here, I decided to go back to drawing board, back to Illustrator, and I decided to fix all of these lines. I just decided to remove them all because I got tired of removing them all inside inside Fusion. It takes more time. Here it's a bit faster. I can just intersect all the drawings to each other, then combine it using the Pathfinder. So yeah, I just cleaned it up using Pathfinder on my right, and I essentially just exported it and imported it into Fusion. So now I have a clean, nice body, just a half of it. So this is my like bed base for the bit, and then I've imported this guy, and I didn't have connection line over there, so I had to connect it. Just done the connection. I think I just jumped through a part where I was inputting it and placing it in the place. Um, I did. I think I did delete a couple bits of this videos just to make it not so long. I mean, it's already really long. But it's really still find it easier to make one long video where you can jump through and skip through rather than a bunch of small videos. Right. Extruding that, extruding the big body. Here's a lot of fun because you have this big body, big chunk of metal, which you can now bevel from different positions. And you can play around and bevel from different sides and see what happens. I decided that I need to push it down a little bit. And then, yeah, so you pick one little edge, and that little edge can actually bevel big time. It does look like a little bit like a mouse from this profile, computer mouse. I was actually trying to get rid of that look of a computer mouse. Not sure if I managed. So I'm trying this stuff again and again, redoing it and redoing it whenever I can, just to test out different ideas. You can see here, I'm not. I have this extra dot there, extra line that is not good, so I had to fill it out, and then do a fill again. Again, leading to that stuff that I was talking about, that having too many dots is detrimental. So I created this that base that I then merged the top part to it like that, because I beveled over the top before, so I lost the certain bits of the model. All right, doing the test. At the time, I was thinking I would apply different materials to the mesh, though I did go with just borrowing one metal for the whole body in the end. But in the future, I'll try to do less monochromatic renders than I did, and I have a tendency to do. All right, so I use that circle as an eye extrusion. So the eyes are going to be like that. Problem, however, which was kind of biting me later on, is that I created these cuts for the eyes, and even at the time I was thinking, I pretty much knew that I'm going to have this problem that they're not separate bodies, right? So these eyes, and it means that I cannot apply a material to them because they're not separate bodies. So it meant that I will not be able to apply some kind of glow material to them, and I ended up having to overpaint all that glow we see in the render has actually been just painted because I didn't do a proper cut in here, and I think I should have done it really because it was lazy. It was lazy of me not doing it. And again, every time you not do it something like that, it comes back to you like tenfold. Like instead of spending 10 minutes here, you end up spending, well, not 100 minutes, but spend, half an hour painting the stuff out on all the four major renders that I made for the project. So it's was a little bit stupid. It was a little bit stupid of me not to make this eyes a separate bits. Also, you'll see me drawing a line all the time. Now I've started to use offset, but sometime before that I was just drawing two lines, which again was a bit stupid. Uh, but this is again when you're jumping into new software and you do this stuff, you do draw two lines, and I think, oh, maybe there's a better way of doing it, and then you figure out, oh, there's actually is a better way of doing it. You can just use an offset command. And draw another cut. This particular class would have been really easy, really not easy, really hard to do in Illustrator because you don't know how the shape of the body is going to look. So there's something that I guess it almost unavoidably have to do inside Fusion because you want to adjust the cuts to the shape of the body. I think so, at least. And then I wanted to do a cut for the little triangle, which kind of holds the eyes. Sometimes the Fusion is always trying to help you and creates a whole bunch of parallel lines and all kind of snap-ins, but sometimes it gets a bit annoying and it becomes a problem to fix it or readjust to the way you want to do it. And you can see it here. I'm just struggling with this particular triangle. I was trying to fit it in, but I'm not able to fit it in because I had all those parallel lines. So it meant that I had to give myself a bit more space. With that cut at the top, then run this stuff again, change the stuff out. This was the one I was at least more or less happy about to cut through. Right, I've cut through. I could have done more work on the eyes, and there should be it should really be a rotating element for there. They should really. Right now, they're looking like up straight to the ceiling, which I thought that okay, this robot got a drone got a lot of mobility, so it can rotate itself wherever it wants. But still, you want it would be nice to have some mobility to the eye segment, which to rotate it and look up front would have been a good idea to do that. And I was thinking about it when I was doing it, but again, because I was getting lazy and tired and bored with the thing, I was thinking, I just want to get it over with. I uh, don't want to spend another, I don't know, we have taken like another 40 minutes to cut it out properly, and well, maybe less than 40, but definitely wasn't fast. And I think I'm redoing some joints here on this particular wing. I didn't like how they looked before. And I can see the inner part of the wing is quite really messy. But again, I knew that nobody would really see that, so I was like, yeah, well. Right, so now it drills down right into the part of the wing, so now I can rotate better. If you compare to the previous look, just a bit more logical now, and before that it was looking like not something that a normal person would design at all, or like produce in real life. So here, I really wanted to make these two bits. I wanted to make them rounded, and it turned out to be a bit harder than I thought. Okay, this one was easy, and this one was easy as well. Well, there was a bit that wasn't easy. Okay, here I just assigned a hotkey for this particular operation because I realized that I was doing it really often. So I was pressing Shift F to do it, and this was easy. But then no, it stopped being easy. Started every time I would apply the it will create that funny circle, and it was really a bit crazy. I was applying different numerical entries, and I was creating this circle, and I was creating and making and making it, and it was just driving me nuts. To be honest, I didn't know what to do about it. Yeah, it's just so annoying. And I was trying to move the points to something. The minimum numerical value still was creating the circle. Tiny, still making the circle. Whatever I do, it's making the circle. Just trying to move it up, move it down, move it somewhere else. I think in the end, I just had to delete the whole piece because this particular thing just didn't make any sense. I think, yeah, I just skipped the part. I recreated the whole bit, and it was a proper rounded corner because I had to just redraw everything. I knew I was getting frustrated, and it wasn't really, it didn't make much sense to record that. So I decided just to skip the recording and redo the part and round it up properly without creating a circle. Right. So the more or less like final testing of the look. Here, with Fusion, it got really cool and nice thing, which I wish other softwares had, where you can press a button and every separate component turns into a different color. Like it assigns a different ID material, a different ID bit to each of your groups, each of your components. So now I was able to go and properly do a proper cleanup of the whole thing, putting it inside different groups and naming it correctly and all that, which I've done. Here I was trying to make like here I decided that like there's no way I'm going to draw that circular thing like that vortex arena that's going to glow because I knew that would be really hard. Like painting eyes was kind of relatively easy, but painting this glow on this ellipse would have been a nightmare. So I decided just that I really need to introduce it here. And I was making it, but then it was a bit too like wide and it was intersecting. Actually, it was I placed it there and I decided that whatever, it's not going to be visible. It's glowing it through, but it was visible, so I had to, later on to go back and redo it. Right. So I'm kind of trying to connect that to that bit. So I didn't do much work on this guy. It's supposed to rotate as well, but I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll be gonna be a stiff bit. So I'm doing this, and it's really important, like grouping this correctly. So I would have been able to rotate the bits. Like, so we have been able to rotate the whole components, like the whole wing, or rotate the whole antenna around a particular point. So I was grouping it by essentially rotational. So I would have a wing rotator with certain bit with that would have a hierarchy where a wing is attached to a wing rotator and wing rotator is attached to the frame, and everything will be rotated individually. So that gives you a lot of freedom to rotate stuff easily. So just carry on with the cleanup job. Started to mirror stuff out. So I had this floating annoying part in the air, which I continuously deleted from all the mirrors. And again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm ballooning this stuff out of existence by dragging the extrusion from the bottom up. So yeah, I combined it, and I was looking at it. You can see it's not really perfect. Like the halves don't meet properly, and this stuff I actually photoshopped out. I was like, oh, whatever, I'll just paint it over. But to be honest, I should have just combined it and beveled that difference so it wouldn't have been that visible. Photoshopping it out again turned out to be a bit laborious and tedious. Could have just welded it all together. It's not that hard. You can see I'm mirroring parts, but then I uh, see that certain parts get certain elements that shouldn't be with that bit. So again, just cleaning up, regrouping stuff. Put in a component inside a component. So then I can rotate the whole assembly. All right, so now I have it. Colored looking bit. Now I want to just, this is the only part that's been mirrored, the essentially the body, just in case it was gonna be visible from the backside. I just, the body's got to be a bit thicker than everything else. So it's essentially housing for the battery, which is a small, extremely powerful battery, I can imagine. All right, so I really like how Fusion implements stuff. Like you pick the component and then you just pick any circle, any bit of the other model you want to rotate around. This is really cool. It's so easy. So pick axis and then rotate around that. Just cool. And then I was just playing around with the amount of rotation, and this is where I kind of realized that, oh well, I should have actually done even more joints. I should have really done this whole thing to be more rotatable. It would have been even cooler. Because it looks like in theory it could have been rotating around as well, but I didn't do it, and that sucked. But stuff that I have here is pretty cool. That I have rotations in a few parts, which allow you to make a more interesting silhouette. Yeah, checking the stuff. I also had this particular bit that I could have rotated like that, and that looked weird. So rotating like this, it just looked like a model is broken. It didn't look right. And here I didn't have any circles, so I'm trying to rotate the front antenna, but I just don't have any circles. And I had to pivot. I had to place the pivot to the edge and then rotate it. Then I had to move antenna in place because it was offsetting it from the center. Right, rotating this leg up or down. This is the fun part where I start to play around with the model and seeing like, okay, I can do this, I can do that. And again, like I was saying before, I didn't fill any of the hard edges because I knew that in Keyshot you can apply rounded edges shader, or you can apply rounded edges in V-Ray in 3ds Max. Not sure if you can do it with Arnold in my. Maybe you can. I wonder if you can do that in Blender. That's I don't know. Right, rotating this vein. And you can see all the antennas are just perfectly straight, which was a bit of a little annoying headache for me, but I had to. It was no easy walk around, so I decided, okay, if it doesn't, if an render is not going to look like they're straight, then it's all right. And on the render, it doesn't really look like they're straight, so. Oh, I managed to kind of rotate these guys, so that's yeah, that was a solution. But it was a little bit tricky though. Like I don't know, like it was tricky to place it. Right, so we're nearing the end of this super long session. Feel free to grab the step file, which you can import in a lot of different applications. To bring it to Blender, you kind of need to convert it to STL, which you guys are free to do. Maybe there should be online STL converters from step to STL. Yeah, you'll find the link in the description to the Gamma Road for that, and you'll find the link in the description to the ArtStation with a bunch of renders about and they and in a few days I'll upload the final part, which is going to be much shorter. maybe like half an hour in length, so 20 minutes in length, where I'll talk about how I rendered it. And it was probably the most fun part. Though obviously the fusion part was the most important, where I created the actual model was all created here. Learned a lot doing it. I think I think I figured out how to use it more or less, and I'll try to use it a bit more in the future projects. So it's a really final cleanup here in the last couple of minutes. I'm not even sure what I'm doing here. Oh yeah, I had to cut out this bit because it was showing up in the render, so I had to cut out part of the ring, like a glow ring, uh, for the engine. And it was behaving really funny because everything is like everything now is being obviously rotated, and it's really not the time to do the final edits. But I was still like trying to figure out how to place a cube and just do a boolean between the ring and the cube, and that's really it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.